This is a Brachiosaurus as a baby, and this is the same Brachiosaurus 3 years later. Today I'm going to show you what it's really like to raise a pet Brachiosaurus from birth all the way to the very end. Every single day of his life was packed with action, and I'll show you everything. He's going to face two real titans, a T-Rex and a mammoth. But let's start from the beginning. One morning I found a suspicious egg right in the middle of my garden. Massive, covered in green veins, warm to the touch. I had no idea where it came from. I just sat down next to it on the ground and waited. I didn't wait long. The shell cracked at the top, then cracked again, then split apart into several pieces. A long, thin neck appeared first, then a head, then everything else. He tumbled out, shook himself off, looked at me and sneezed loudly right in my face. There he was, my Brachiosaurus. The size of a kitten, neck longer than his body, and a look on his face like he already knew everything about this world and was mildly disappointed. One thing became clear straight away. He had a superpower from birth. Everything growing underground he could feel through his feet. Literally, he'd step on the soil and know what was down there half a meter deep. Roots, bulbs, sprouting seeds. Like a living radar, but through his legs. The problem was he had absolutely no idea how to use it, so he just shuffled around looking thoughtful and occasionally started digging in completely random spots around the garden. Now let's talk about food, because that's a whole story on its own. I gave him a hot chili pepper. He took a bite, 3 seconds of silence, and then he opened his mouth, stuck out his tongue, and started whipping his head side to side so fast I actually stepped back. Pepper was rejected permanently. Then I gave him a ripe banana. He sniffed it, licked it, and ate the whole thing in 4 seconds. Then looked at me so meaningfully that I immediately handed him another one. Banana became the great love of his life. Then came the carrot. He picked it up, held it in his mouth, spat it out, stared at it on the ground, picked it up again, spat it out again, and kept doing this for about 5 minutes before finally eating it with the expression of someone doing you a massive favor. Last was hot soup. He lowered his nose to the bowl, felt the steam, jerked his head up and slammed it into the porch ceiling. Hot food was off the table forever. I gave him half the garden, fenced off the area, put up a shelter, laid down soft soil. He walked in, methodically circled the whole perimeter, sniffed every corner, and lay down exactly in the middle. Accepted without complaint. Then I introduced him to the other animals. The neighbor's cat walked up to the fence, saw him, turned around and left. Forever. She never came into the yard again. But the dog Borka was a completely different story. He ran over, sniffed him from every angle, licked him on the nose and started bouncing around. The Brachiosaurus sat patiently while Borka ran circles around him, then with one flick of his tail, sent the dog rolling across the grass. Borka came back 10 seconds later. They became friends. 6 months passed and he had grown noticeably. Waist height on me now, his neck reaching the roof of the garage. We started going out together. First to the park. I ran as hard as I could while he walked calmly beside me, glancing over with the expression of someone waiting for you to catch up. Then to the market. I was bracing for disaster, but he walked between the stalls carefully, barely touched anything, and when he leaned toward the fruit stand, the seller just held a melon straight up to his mouth. Then we stopped at a playground and he went down the slide, once, then a second time, then a third, sitting at the bottom each time looking like this was the greatest invention in human history. The slide survived. Barely. That same day he met a cow at the neighboring farm. They stared at each other for a long time. The cow nodded her head, he nodded his neck, and they both went their separate ways. Mutual respect. No words needed. That evening, he fell asleep right in the garden, in the middle of the beds, on top of the tomatoes. The tomatoes did not survive the night. Another month passed and something changed in him. Every day he got bigger and every day a little more restless. Not aggressive, just tense, like something was pressing on him from the inside. He was running out of space. The yard that once seemed enormous was now just a patch of land with a fence around it. The trees that used to be taller than him now only reached his shoulder. He started standing at the gate more and more, staring out beyond it for long stretches, completely still, every single morning. I knew what it meant, I just wasn't ready to admit it. That's the last photo I took in my house. Him standing at the gate looking into the distance, me standing beside him looking at him. We both knew something was going to change. 2.5 years in, he was taken to a nature reserve, a big one, purpose-built, with an enormous territory. I arranged it myself, drove him there myself, opened the gates myself, and closed them behind him myself. He hated the reserve from day one. The other animals kept their distance, tourists showed up every day to take photos, the staff ran the irrigation system on full heat, humidity, full tropical mode. He stood in the far corner and pretended none of it existed, but you could see he was suffering. He wasn't tropical. He needed cool air and real ground under his feet, not concrete paths. 3 weeks in, he broke through the fence on his third attempt, walked out onto the main path of the reserve and headed for the exit. Security tried to stop him. He walked around them without slowing down, like they were just traffic cones. The tourists parted on their own. Someone was filming on their phone. He walked out through the gates and headed north. They caught him 2 days later. They fitted a control collar on him, took him to a military base and put him to work, crushing old tanks, demolishing training structures, demonstrating force. He did everything they asked, but with such obvious contempt that even the soldiers looked uncomfortable watching. At one point, he accidentally crushed a working Jeep. He just didn't notice it. It was small by his standards. They punished them for it and cut his food. He lay down on the ground and didn't get up for 3 days, not out of weakness, purely out of principle. On the 4th day, he stood up, examined the collar carefully, found the weak point at the clasp, braced his neck against a concrete post, and yanked sharply. The collar snapped. Security arrived within a minute. He was already looking at the steel gates of the base, 3 meters high. He built up speed and took them out with one shoulder charge, without even slowing down. After that came the chaos. He walked through the city and simply did not care. He wasn't targeting people, wasn't destroying things on purpose. He was just moving forward. But anything that got in the way got removed. A billboard came down with his tail, a fence went with his shoulder, a construction crane that hung too low got taken out by his neck. People scattered. Someone was always filming. The news went to live coverage. I sat at home watching television thinking, well, there it is. I knew this was coming. By this point, his ability had evolved. He'd learned to send shock waves through the ground by stomping. 1 foot down and a wave rolls out 50 meters in every direction, shaking everything on that radius apart. The army tried to stop him with a vehicle column. He used a wave, every engine stalled at once. He stepped over the vehicles and kept walking. And finally, the opponents. The T-Rex attacked first, launching himself with his jaws wide open. The Brachiosaurus simply moved his head to the side on that long neck, like dodging a ball, and the T-Rex flew straight past him. While he was getting up, he took a tail shot to the ribs and went flying into the bushes. The mammoth came in from the other side, lowered his 3-meter tusks and charged. The Brachiosaurus stomped, the shockwave rolled through the ground, and the mammoth tripped at full speed and went tumbling. He got up, shook his head, looked at the Brachiosaurus, lowered his tusks, and walked away in silence. Smart animal. The T-Rex climbed back out of the bushes and jumped again. This time, the Brachiosaurus didn't dodge, just put his neck straight up vertical, and the T-Rex ran into it like a stone pillar. Dropped, lay there for a moment, slowly got up, and also left. Both defeated. The Brachiosaurus wasn't even breathing hard. After the fight, he walked for several more days, south, through open steppes and foothills until he reached the edge of the jungle. Dense, dark, no people, no roads. He stopped at the tree line, raised his head, and spent a long time taking in the smell. Moisture, soil, trees, something alive deep inside. Then he took one step forward, then another. The trees closed behind them and he was gone. He was spotted a few more times after that. Hunters talked about a massive silhouette moving between the trees, about the ground vibrating from footsteps deep in the forest, about tracks the size of a small swimming pool on the riverbanks. But nobody went deep enough to actually see him. He found a place where no one would bother him, where there are no collars and no reserves with irrigation systems, where the ground beneath his feet is alive and endless. I think he's doing well there. I really hope he is. I raised him from an egg the size of a grapefruit. Fed him bananas and watched him wage war on a carrot, took him to the market and down the slide, watched him sleep on the tomatoes and make friends with Borka. And then he snapped his collar, beat a T-Rex, and walked into the jungle. I don't regret a single day of it. Somewhere deep in that forest, he's eating bananas right now and finally getting some rest. He earned it more than anyone.